Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you.
All right, welcome to your first geometry video. 3 teachers here, Miss Reams, Miss Ramirez, and
Hi guys, this is Ms. Gonzalez.
Miss Gonzalez. Today we're going to be talking about the distance and midpoint formula. So you're going to need your vocab book out so that we can fill out all the information that you need to help you out. Okay, so you should have this book out. Okay, make sure you've written your name on it, your teacher, and your period, and go ahead and open it up to the vocabulary section. Okay, so the way this works is you go ahead and write whatever word or words that we're talking about here in your nicest writing, and then you'll fill in your definition here, and we give you all this information. Okay, and then whatever pictures or characteristics go with your vocab word, you'll draw in here. Okay, so the first thing that we're talking about today is the distance formula. And the distance formula is a formula that's used to find the distance between 2 points. So we have a point here and a point here. To find this distance or the length from one point to another, we have this neat little formula where all we have to do is plug in the numbers that we're given that represent the points. So we would just plug them in, and then we simplify all this. Okay, so pause the video and go ahead and write all of this down. We're going to be practicing some distance formula problems. Right now you're just writing down the definition and the pictures. Okay, so below distance formula, you're going to go ahead and write midpoint formula. Okay, so we can fit 2 vocabs on each page. And our definition for midpoint formula would be a formula used to find the point halfway between the endpoints of a line segment. So all that means is it helps us find the middle of a line given the 2 endpoints. Okay, so this is called a line segment because it's just part of a line. And then we can find where the middle is, the midpoint, given this nice little formula here. Okay, it says add x1 and x2. So we would just add whatever number this is and whatever number this is, and then divide by 2. And then do the same for the y's. You'll add your 2 y values from your coordinates, and then divide by 2. When we simplify all this, we're going to know what coordinate this is. What point is that? Where's the middle, the midpoint? And we're going to be practicing that. So pause the video and go ahead and write all this out. Okay, now you're going to go to page 41 in your book and find the page that looks like this. This is where we will actually do problems. So we will have 3 problems that we'll do in the video today, and then the 4th problem we'll do in class. Okay, so go ahead and find this page in your book, page 41. Okay, this spot right here is set aside for the title of the lesson, and we'll always give that to you. You'll know what to write there. Okay, go ahead and fill in today's date, and this is where you're going to do problem 1. Okay, but I'm going to switch to a different screen, a blank screen, so that I can fit more work on there for you to be able to see the problems a little bit better. But only do problem 1 in this box. Save this one for problem 2. Okay, for problem 1, go ahead and write out the directions. You always want to write out the directions of the problem that you're being asked to solve. Okay. On this one, go ahead and write down what is point A and what is point B, because we need to find the distance between point A and point B. Don't worry about drawing this graph. Just take a look at it and realize that we're going to be looking to find the length of this blue line here. So I would recommend that you write down the distance formula on each problem that you're working out for distance. Not only will it help you memorize it, but you'll know where to plug in the numbers that we need. So D stands for distance. We need to find y2, y1, x2, and x1. And all 4 of those numbers are right here. Okay, let's start with point A. Okay, point A has an x value and a y value. Okay. Okay, the x value on point A would be the -3. It's the first number in the ordered pair. So this is going to represent your x. And the 2 would represent y. Well, same thing over here. Point B has an x and it has a y. But because point A is first, we're going to call that x1, y1. Okay, because it's our first point. And the second one would be, because it's our second point, x2, y2. So once you have your points labeled, it's just a matter of plugging in the numbers into the formula and simplifying. So let's try that. So we have D equals the square root of, what was y2? Well, look at it. We labeled it. It was 6. Okay, minus, what was y1? It was 2. And then we have to, whatever we get there, we're going to square it. Okay, so right now we're just plugging everything in. Now we need to find x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is -3 squared. Okay, so all I did was I looked for y2, which was here, and it was 6. Looked for y1, which was 2. Looked for x2, which was 4, and x1, which was -3. And I just plugged them all in to the distance formula. Now we need to simplify all this. So we'll work in the parentheses first. So don't forget your square root. Now if we work in the parentheses, 6 minus 2 is 4. So that would be 4 squared. Plus, now 4 minus -3. I was always taught keep, flip, change. Okay. You might have been taught a different way to work with negatives, okay, but you end up getting 4 plus 3, 7 squared. Okay, you don't want to add the 4 and the 7 yet. We need to square each number first. Okay, so D equals the square root, okay, 16. 4 squared is 16, 4 times 4, plus 7 squared, which is 49. Okay, now we can add the 16 and the 49. So we get D equals the square root of 65. Okay, 16 plus 49. Well, we can just punch that into our calculator and get an approximate answer. Okay, I don't know the square root of 65. I know the square root of 64 is 8, but I don't know the square root of 65, so I better use a calculator, and I'll probably have to round my answer, which is why I put those squiggly equal signs, which means approximately. Okay, after plugging 65 into the square root of 65 into the calculator, I got 8.1. Okay, so the length or distance from point A to point B is 8.1 units. Okay, on to problem 2. Okay, make sure that you write out the directions. The graph, don't worry about drawing the graph. We're going to go ahead and write out what points J and K are because they didn't tell us this time. So we need to figure out what is point J. Okay, so J is what point? And K is what point? So let's start with K. K looks a little bit easier to find. So remember, with a point, you label the x value first. You write out the x value, then the y value. So you go over here. The x value would be 3, and the y value would be 2. So we're going to write that in. 3, 2. And for J, the x value would have to be, well, this is -4. It would have to be -5. And then the y value would have to be 4. So this one's going to be -5, +4. Okay, so once you figured out what point you're working with, now we can go ahead and start working this out. Remember, you always want to label the points. What is your x1, y1, x2, y2? So J is our first point, so we're going to call that x1, y1, since it's our first point. And K is our second point, so we're going to call that x2, y2. Now, if you switched them and you made K your first point, it's okay. You'll still get the same answer. So we are ready to plug it into our formula. So D equals, okay, let's go ahead and get everything set up here so that we just have to plug in the numbers. Okay, so there's our template. We just plug them in. So the first thing we need is y2, and we know y2 is the number 2. And minus y1, which would be 4. And then in the second set of parentheses, we have to find x2, which is 3, and minus x1, which is negative 5. Okay, now we simplify. So D equals, okay, we work in the parentheses first. We follow order of operations. 2 minus 4. Well, you can change it to plus minus if that helps you. Okay, or keep flip change. So 2 plus negative 4 would be negative 2 squared plus, now we can do keep flip change here, keep flip change, and that's going to give us 3 plus 5, which would be 8 squared. Okay, let's keep going. Negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4. And 8 squared is 64. So we have to figure out what is the square root of 68. Well, I know the square root of 64 is 8, but I don't know the square root of 68. So I know it's going to be a rounded answer. So I just need to plug it into the calculator again. Okay, after plugging it into the calculator, I get 8.2 when I round it, units. So the distance from J to K would be 8.2 units. Okay, we'll practice the distance formula more in class. Let's move on to problem 3. Good news for you. The midpoint formula is way easier to use than the distance formula. A lot less work. So, it works the same though. You're still going to be given 2 points, and you have to plug them into a formula. And the cool thing is that you label them the same way you labeled the distance formula problems. So our first point is point A, so we're going to label that x1, y1. And our second point, x2, y2. Okay, and just like before, we just go ahead and plug them in to the formula. So M, we'll use M for midpoint. M equals parentheses, okay, x1, which is 5, plus x2, which we wrote as 7, all divided by 2, comma, y1, which is 3, plus y2, which is 4, all divided by 2, parentheses. Now this time we're not finding a length like the distance formula. Here we're finding a point. So that's why we have the parentheses, because we're going to end up with an ordered pair, an x value and a y value. So we just go ahead and simplify each fraction. So we get 12 divided by 2 and 7 divided by 2. Okay, well, let's keep simplifying. 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 7 divided by 2 doesn't go in evenly, but we can use a calculator or just divide it off to the side, and we get 3.5. So if I were to plot these 2 points, A and B, and try to find where is the middle of A and B, it would be the point 6, 3.5. That would be the point in the middle. Okay, well, I hope you took some good notes. Be sure to go back to the front of your book and fill out your table of contents. It's really important to do. See you in class.